The Mark Thompson Show.
On Fridays, we are so lucky to welcome in two award-winning journalists who have reported on politics for all of their professional careers. This guy has forgotten more about politics than most of us will ever know. How about it for the great Michael Shure, everybody? Michael Shure.
Thanks.
Yeah. And, of course, the former senior correspondent at ABC News, longtime White House correspondent, Jim Avila. Yeah. Gentlemen, very big week. And I'm wondering where you want to start. Certainly the indictments have now stacked up. It's a broad network that is well described in the Georgia indictment. But the thing that is troubling is the call for violence and for intimidation. And it would appear that that call is being honored. So I'm troubled by a lot of stuff here. And then I want to get to the poll, or you can mention the poll whenever you want. I know Jim Avila has been, talking about the fact that Trump ain't as popular as you think he is type thing. And maybe even as the media represents him. So at some point, let's visit that. But in any case, so Jim, get us going. What were your thoughts on the week? Oh, wait, whoa. What is happening, Albert, with Jim's stuff?
Hello.
There you go. Show? Okay, go for it. Go ahead, Jim.
Better now?
Yes, thank you.
I think, one of the significant things that has happened this week is Trump's attorneys have indeed asked for a huge delay, as you've mentioned, Mark, on the show today in his trial, to 2026. And while it sounds absurd, and it is absurd, they do have kind of a case that it shouldn't start as soon as the prosecution wants. When you listen to the breakdown, there is so much evidence against him. There are so many documents that in their plea they say to the judge, we would have to read 900,000 documents a day to get to the point to where they could catch up and provide a defense. There is so much evidence that really what he's asking for is probably not going to happen. There should be some delay till 2026 is ridiculous. Unfortunately, all he really needs or wants is until the 2024 election, where he's hoping against hope that somehow he'll win. I think Michael and I have pretty much said that he doesn't have a chance of winning. So is it all academic? Possibly.
Michael?
Yeah, look, when you look at all the cases, I mean, you saw Eileen Cannon in the Florida case when the Trump people asked for a delay say no, and she's a Trump-appointed judge in the state of Florida. So this idea that they're going to be asking for these delays is actually to be expected. It's the way that the judges deal with it and the way that the prosecutors deal with it too, because if the defense needs all that time, so too does the prosecution. So an extension may be put into place here, but there are other options here as well, which is bifurcating some of this case so that some of it can be tried very quickly and some of it's going to take a while. And then you have all these unindicted co-conspirators or indicted co-conspirators who are going to clearly, some of them, work for the prosecution, take deals here to speak about what happened. So the evidence is going to get worse for Trump before it gets better. These people know that, and going into the election here, that's exactly what they're trying to avoid. So I think that's why they're asking for it. It probably deserves a delay. 2026, when he will still be a former president, seems like it's a little too far.
I just wish they could somehow get together. Why can't they? What is preventing Jack Smith getting together with the New York people and the Georgia people?
I think the look of it.
And getting a schedule, getting a schedule that works for everyone.
They could do it. To get together, though, sends a message that there's this cabal against Trump rather than these four separate jurisdictions that are going after him in different ways for different things. And that's the perception that they don't want to give off. They want to make it seem like it's coming from everywhere, not that it's coming from one big place.
Send their scheduling secretaries. They don't have to go themselves. Get a calendar, one of those old books. get together and, let's figure this out. It's not that difficult.
Well, there is that fact that these things are all, how I was saying it in the first hour, kind of all having to land on the same runway. There's a lot of stuff in the air that has to be landed here legally. I'm talking about, but
right, and that's not the prosecution's fault. That's
Sure.
Donald Trump's fault. He broke
Right.
laws everywhere, and so now he's having to face the music.
That's the reason you have all these indictments. All these indictments around me. I don't understand it. Isn't it clear the more indictments they bring, the more it's just a political witch hunt? No, the more indictments they bring, potentially it means the more laws you broke, which I think seems demonstrably the case. Bifurcating is a ding word, and cabal is a ding word. I wanted to ask you though: does this dirty up Trump? Does any of this stick to this guy that really, I'll use the phrase Teflon Don, which I think goes back to New York mobster type reporting,
Yeah.
but he is someone who seems to have weathered a lot of these legal storms and these various legal entanglements pretty in a way that really left him free to ascend to the presidency. Does this stuff stick to him now, Jim?
I think so. I think it is sticking. You alluded to the poll that showed that more than 65% of the electorate, the general electorate, will not vote for him as a president. And I think the Republican Party is setting itself up for a disaster, not just for Donald Trump, but for the entire party, and damage for years to come if they do indeed nominate this guy. The more we hear, this Georgia indictment is so thorough and so damning, and a lot of people heard about this one, and I think that the polls are going to get just worse and worse, and I think he has just a minuscule chance of ever winning a general election again, no matter what the Democrats do, and no matter what baloney they throw up against Joe Biden because of his son Hunter. There is really no chance for not only Donald Trump, but for the Republican Party as a whole, for the loyal opposition. It's not there anymore.
And the place I diverge with Jim there, because I agree with just about all he's saying, is that it's going to have an enduring effect. I don't think things have enduring effects anymore. I need to be proven otherwise, but I think that this will matter now, and then it won't matter later. Even if they nominate him, it'll be very easy between election cycles to say we're taking a break from the past when he becomes toxic, and he's on his way to becoming toxic. Let's also not forget that he was rejected and lost before he was ever indicted. He was a losing president for re-election before he was ever indicted. Now these indictments make it even more difficult for him, especially when you see the numbers, like 65% of Americans practically saying they would never vote for him for president. The Republicans also have to think practically about that, whether it's Donald Trump or not. They want a Republican president, and that's where it becomes something that they have to see mattering. There is going to be, when we see this debate next Wednesday night, the first Republican debate, you're going to see people going after each other, but also trying to adhere to Trump while saying at the same time, but we need a break from that. We need to go in a different direction, his policies, but not the distractions. And the more he becomes that distraction, the more people will start to accept that. Again, Democrats want Donald Trump to run for president, and these numbers show why. Yeah,
the numbers are, well, just even on the whether he should be prosecuted, the numbers are overwhelming. 57% to 37%. That's a Quinnipiac poll. And they're
Connecticut. Hamden, Connecticut is where you'll find Quinnipiac.
And it's, by the way, as Jim says, these polls are now among independent voters, which I think increasingly is where the focus of attention comes, right? It's where, again, these independent voters, you guys can help me with this. They are those who have registered independent or who are still not sure which way they want to go. When they talk about independent voters in a poll, what do they mean, Michael Shure?
They cite it when they say it's registered independents. Otherwise, they have a little more wiggle room as to who an independent is. You can ask somebody if they're an independent or not, and they can say it. But when they cite independent voters, it shows up that way. So I don't know how it was cited with Quinnipiac. But the point is, when you look at the pool of independent voters, a lot of them are disaffected Republicans who don't want to vote for Donald Trump, but may then lean toward whoever the Republican nominee is coming back into the fold.
It is wild to hear, Jim, that off referenced, well, I don't want Joe Biden in, so I'd vote for anyone but that, Marxist, communist, whatever. It's almost like a talking point related thing. The vitriol associated with the Biden presidency, I don't know quite where it comes from, because Biden, you can disagree with his policies, but he's not a particularly hateful guy. He's not a flamethrower. Do we only hear that from the partisans and it doesn't extend beyond those?
Well, the hatred, I think, is just from the partisans, and it's there's always been this right-wing hatred. First, it was really focused on Hillary Clinton for a decade or more. Barack Obama got some of it, but he was insulated a bit by not only his charisma, but by the fact that he was a black man. So they had to be a little careful. But now it's being unleashed on Joe Biden by that segment that is really pro-Trump and really anti-Democrat, and believes that because we have medical care for all, or for many, that we've become a communist nation. Those folks, those folks are not going to change their mind. I think the reticence among the rest of the people, among independents and among Democrats, remains whether or not Joe Biden will remain healthy and whether or not he will live because of his age. That is the leading problem with Joe Biden. It's not his policies. His policies are very popular, and he's pretty popular as a person, but his age is a problem.
Well, and his age being a problem makes his vice president a problem too, because I've always been of the opinion that vice presidents don't matter, and because I'm right about it, they never have. They don't really affect who you vote for. Maybe Lyndon Johnson helped John Kennedy, but it's hard to think back to another time where it mattered as much electorally. But when you look at what an 80-year-old perceptibly slower president is, in terms of his gait and his motion, not in my opinion anyway, his brain and the way he's presiding, it takes on a new flavor. And if you have a vice president who is unpopular, that too becomes a burden. And I think that it will be up to that ticket to sort of really pull up Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, as much as they can in these coming months, because I think things that didn't matter before, like age, like vice president, are going to matter a lot this year or next year.
Well, to your point, Brian is saying this. He does have a chance to win if Trump sells the Harris as president thing. Should something happen to Biden, it's exactly the point you're making. And those afraid of socialism vote against the Harris for president thing. He could pull this off. Essentially buttressing what you've just said. It is wild that
it's still Trump. It's still Trump, right? It doesn't matter as much as Trump. None of it matters as much as Trump matters, in my opinion. And so if Trump is the nominee, it's going to be very difficult for any of that to really stick. If Trump is not the nominee, and Republicans, many of them know it, many have said it privately, if Trump is not the nominee, then all of these things can be exploited really, really easily by them.
And I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't get. I still am not. I have to push back on Michael a little bit. Every vice president has a problem.
Correct.
They do not. They're in a terrible job, which does not allow them to. And if Harris would have asserted herself, then there'd be complaints about her asserting herself and trying to take away from Biden and put herself as a candidate. So she's in a very difficult position. And I see some of your viewers have been saying that Harris is a problem, and Michael believes that she's a problem.
It's not against Harris. I don't understand why she is a problem, frankly, because of everything you just said. I really don't get it, but she is. Yeah. And I think she will matter more. And what I'm saying is they can make her not a problem quite easily, or they can work at doing that. And so, I mean, I interrupted you, Jim, but I want you
No,
to.
I mean, that's fine. I mean, and I agree. I agree that there's a perception out there that she's a problem, as we can see from the comments here. This guy who's saying that she is a socialist is out of his mind. He doesn't know what she's about if he calls her a socialist. She
Right.
was, she was a district attorney and an attorney general in California where she was criticized for being too tough and
That's
putting
right.
people who were smoking marijuana in prison. This is a woman who is not a flaming liberal. She is pretty much a pretty moderate Democrat. Just because she's African American doesn't make her a crazy progressive. That's just wrong.
Yeah, she's not a socialist. She's not anywhere near that. She was certainly, when they were looking for progressive, bona fides in last time against Bernie Sanders, her progressive record was really low when she was a senator in that brief time. So you're right. I'm really just talking about it as how she's perceived on the ticket, and the fact that the vice president does nothing means nothing. But this is the first time it's going to mean something in our lifetime, that it could mean something because of the president's age.
And the rest of that GOP field, is there anything that stands out to you? I've kind of begun to take apart that Vivek Ramaswamy. I'd be happy to do more of it next week if there's interest. It seemed like there was a lot of interest in comments that I saw. But also, you've got Chris Christie beginning to get some traction. He's the only real smack talker up there. Everybody else, as you've said, has tried to sort of walk on eggshells around Trump and get to policies. Can you see anyone in the rest of the field who might begin to be more ascendant, Michael?
I mean, I always go to Tim Scott. He's from a now earlier state in South Carolina. He is somebody that is a real conservative. He's African American. He speaks the religious. He speaks the social. He's somebody who could be appealing to voters who are looking for something that isn't Trump and don't really buy into DeSantis, as we're seeing. I think Vivek Ramaswamy and some of the others are, every election has somebody like a Vivek Ramaswamy. If it was Andrew Yang last time, if it was Maury Taylor in '96, they're people that come out and do these things, which to their credit, and he's getting traction. He beat DeSantis in one poll I saw this week. But I think that the one that I would look at is Tim Scott.
Jim?
And I don't think anybody in the race right now is going to emerge as the candidate if Trump falters. I would watch out for Glenn Youngkin out of Virginia, who is more moderate than the others. He vaulted into national prominence, because of his stance on schools, which could leave him a bit in a bit of trouble in the general election. He's the one who didn't want, who was campaigning against race theory, which is total baloney. But it needs to be, and it would be under a lot more scrutiny if he runs for president. But he's one of it's governors, Republican governors, who will emerge if there's a problem with Trump and if he actually goes away, in my opinion.
And Brian Kemp is one too, who has maintained throughout an anti-Trump strain. He's from Georgia, which would close the book on Georgia pretty immediately for the Republicans, which they would like to do. So there is something that matters there. If Brian Kemp were to run, he stayed out of this race. And I agree that I don't think we're looking at any of the next Republican candidates in the race right now.
Just to digress for a moment off the presidency in our last minute or two, I'm seeing Michael Shure in so many of these state legislatures and, as you just mentioned, governors, these draconian efforts to get rid of books in schools. And you're seeing the policies that we talk about as really not being viable or popular nationally. You're seeing them instituted. It's a bizarre, but frankly, these are events that are happening nationwide. Can you speak to the politics of that, kind of the local politics associated with this stuff?
Well, it's sort of like it's grooming your own minor league team in a way, right? If you're a baseball team and you have a good strong farm system, it bodes well for the future, and that's pretty much what they're doing. It's a longer conversation than 1 or 2 minutes before the end of our segment, but basically it's what the Koch brothers did and started, which was, let's forget the presidency and the Senate; those are going to go the way they go. Let's take care of the state legislatures. Let's look at state houses and state senates and work on those and get our policies and get conservatism growing there. It's grassroots conservatism, which has worked well for progressives on the other side, and they took a book out of it, and they have so much more money for those issues, and that's why you're seeing them happen. In short,
yeah. And it's the reason it's been successful is that Democrats have not been focused on these state legislatures, have not put the money into it, and even local school boards, they've not paid attention, and they need to pay attention. There's a great article today in the Washington Post. If you have a chance to read it, about how American democracy is cracking because we're being run by minority government, and minority government has way too much power, not only in the Senate and in the Congress, where people don't have, it's rigged so that the popular vote means nothing, but also, with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is ruling against very popular things in the United States, from gun control to abortion, all these issues that are very popular. And that all that is undermining the confidence of Americans in their government, because they see that it's not reflecting what their values are, and that they can't change it. We can't change it no matter how many people get out and vote for the president. It's not working because the Republicans have been very successful in gerrymandering all these districts around the country and states, and that needs to change.
And not to mention the Electoral College, which is the sort of granddaddy of all minority rule. I mean, it doesn't matter how many votes you get for president either. You could win the presidency, as we've seen with the Electoral College. The Senate is designed that way. The rest of the government was not designed that way.
Well, and as long as you're reading things, the Post article sounds intriguing. I haven't seen it yet this morning, but I would encourage you to, on Michael's point, when you talk about Koch brother money and you talk about the concentration on local government, it's the Jane Mayer book. I read it a while ago. I think it's called Dark Money. And it really speaks to what Michael Shure is talking about, and Jim as well, that, you begin the blocking and tackling at the local level, and you don't think about local politics, but the book even describes how they get into educational institutions. And so you've really created, as you said, Michael, kind of to use your farm team kind of parallel, you've created a system by which you will take power. So I recommend that book as well. Guys, got to wrap. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Michael Shure on TYT, Jim Avila. Look forward to your column every week as well, sir. So we'll talk next week. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.